What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm here to bring you probably the last Orktober video before we get into everything creepy and horror of the 40K universe, a whole week dedicated to the Halloween side of 40K. But today, we have none other than the man himself, Vulkan, taking on a massive orc war boss. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and dive into this excerpt from the novel, Vulkan, the Lord of Drakes. A massive orc warlord thundered through the breach in the wall. It shoved aside the smoking ruins of the cannons and trampled smaller orcs beneath its feet. It glared at the Primarch and loosened a roar fit to bring down the ceiling of the cavernous hall. Its body was encased in armor so thick it looked as if the monster was wearing tanks. Each step it took as it marched towards the termite shook the floor like the impact of a shell. Its hands were as big as power claws, and it wielded a monstrous chain hammer. The head of the weapon was half as big as Vulkan. The giant crossed the hall, pounding the floor with an earthquake tread as it rushed to clash with Vulkan himself. But he was ready, waiting in the same position as the giant that burst through the flames, its monstrous hammer raised over its head with both hands. Vulkan fired his weapon, Anvil's Light. The shot enveloped the frontal armor of the beast. It melted through a foot of dense metal and exposed and burned the corded flesh beneath. A shot that would have evaporated a score of the warlord's underlings, and it didn't even slow him down. The orc arrived before Vulkan, and it leapt into the hole and swung the great hammer down. The weapon was offensively crude, and yet, as he dodged away from its head, which was covered with half a dozen spinning chains, Vulkan recognized the power that it held. He saw the pride of the beast in the summit of its art. In this moment of realization, he acknowledged that it was right that they should meet just now. The hammer struck the hull of the spear of fire with explosive force. The air rippled outwards, and there was a clap of thunder. In the same instant, the strike split the hull open. The orc shelling and the cavern instability caused both Vulkan and the warboss to be enveloped in a mound of wreckage. The mound heaved, and the mound roared. The mound erupted, and at its peak, wreckage exploded aside, flame shooting outward, and from the top, burned and scorched in roaring thunder, came a monster of nightmare, and the hero that was its doom. Vulkan's armor was scorched from being at the heat of the explosions. Shrapnel and a mass of velocity that would have cut a chimera in two had left rents and gouges to him all the way down to the bone. The orc warlord's hammer had cracked the chest plate and driven shards of ceramite deep into his muscles. The armor bore the scars of battle and fire, and so did Vulkan, but they were not disfigured. They were being shaped on the anvil of war. He was the center of a furnace, and even now, as he and the warlord had emerged on top of the wreckage, it was now, when the material was malleable to the craftsman's hammer, that the most crucial of blows would be struck. The battle had marked the orc warlord as well. The firestorm of explosions in Vulkan's blow had shattered the pistons in his left leg and torn away the plating of its right arm and shoulder. The massive helmet was shorn at its horns, and Vulkan had driven the spikes of its lower guard into the orc's jaws. Metal and bone were fused, and the orc spat rivers of blood every time it roared. The pain enraged it, and the beast seemed neither weakened nor slowed by it. If anything, its blows were now driven by fury, and were even more powerful. But they were undisciplined too, more erratic. Vulkan moved the instant before the hammer came down, too late for the orc to change its aim. He smashed through a twisted grinder on his right and came around the warlord's flank. He stabbed Nightforged into the grinding gears of the orc's armor. The mechanism melted and smoked, and the blade plunged between the plates into the body of the monster. The warlord turned into the pain, and Vulkan stood his ground as the orc's movement dragged Nightforged through the flesh, severing muscle and machinery. Dark blood sprayed over Vulkan's arms, and the stench was thick, lung-squeezing the smell of rotting fungus. The orc turned faster, ignoring the gaping wound and using the momentum to swing the hammer around in a lightning strike. Vulkan saw it coming, but this time the attack was too fast. He pulled Nightforged, but a mesh of collapsing gears held it fast for a mere moment. He jerked it free as the hammer smashed into his side. Every blow of the orc's weapon was like being struck by a mechanized wall. The head's whirling chains had teeth as long as a man's finger. They struck out at all angles, and they tore around the hammer's head at blinding speed. The weapon shredded as it crushed, and when the orc hit with its full strength, the effect was indeed devastating. Vulkan was moving right when the orc hit him, and this allowed him to absorb part of the force of the strike, but the monstrous head crushed the side of his armor and shattered his ribs. He stopped himself from flying off the mound by throwing all his weight into his right leg. It sank deep into the wreckage, anchoring him. Lightning flares of pain exploded down the entire length of his left flank, but he kept his focus and fired a quick shot with Anvil's light. The warlord recoiled from the plasma burst. More of his helm hung as molten slag, but though his flesh was crisp black, it was as if the beast were made of savagery itself, and it was no more than burned. The orc glared at Vulkan and swung the hammer again. Vulkan ducked and blocked, slashing at the monster's arms, breaking down the armor bit by bit. But no matter how much he damaged it, the orc barely slowed. The armor began to seem ornamental, a cage that could barely contain the unstoppable body within. And the orc roared with desperate fury, as if at an instinctual level it understood the kind of hope Vulkan and his legion represented, and in retaliation sought to teach them a different lesson, one of futility and extinction. It slammed the hammer down, deliberately missing Vulkan and striking the peak of the wreckage. The impact was tremendous, and the entire mound shifted. New pillars of flame erupted from within, surrounding the combatants, and Vulkan kept his feet and launched himself at the orc, blasting at the colossal armor with Anvil's light and slashing at the arms with Nightforged, forcing the warlord into the defensive. The orc swung past his guard and hit him on the shoulder, stunning him and driving him down into the ruins past his knees. Hit him again and again before he could recover, catching his left arm as he raised it. A meteoric blow smashed Anvil's light from his grasp. It bellowed in triumph and raised the hammer for the death blow. Vulkan grabbed the shaft of the hammer with one hand. The shock of the impact pushed him further into the ruin. Metal heated red by the raging furnace at the mound's center contracted around him, burning through the rents in his armor. Snarling, the orc pressed down. Pushing back was like trying to lift an entire world. The warlord brayed in its barbaric tongue, cursing Vulkan as it shoved him down, burying him once again in the volcanic core of metal. And Vulkan strained against the beast's strength, his arm on the verge of breaking. He found purchase for his feet on stable debris, while flames enveloped his legs. He braced himself, the pain irrelevant. There was too much at stake. "You cannot finish me like this," he taunted, looking into the glinting yellow of the orc's eyes. "You know it. You need to hit me again. You know that burying me is not enough. You believe you must shatter me, but I swear to you that even that will not suffice." Suddenly the orc yanked the hammer up, and Vulkan let go. The orc hauled the immense weapon back far over its shoulders. It arced its back with the gathering force needed for the strike. But Vulkan roared and leapt, pushing against the compacted wreckage and out of the furnace. He shot up inside the reach of the monster's arms, and drove Nightforged up through the slag of the orc's helm, into its throat, and up into its skull. The beast's hand spasmed as it dropped the hammer. It remained standing, jaw slack, brain pierced, and burned as Vulkan withdrew his blade, turning it on its side and in a single blow, cutting off the monster's head. And with that being said, that is the end of this awesome excerpt between Primarch and massive orc war boss. If you guys didn't catch the video before, it's basically another battle akin to this, but this time it's Guilliman against an orc war boss, and here we have Vulkan. Very similar stories, but really awesome to just get the picture in your mind of these massive Primarch-sized beasts of an orc going against both Vulkan and Guilliman. So again, guys, that's it for me. No more Orctober here till maybe next year. But again, we'll be giving you guys more orc lore here and there. But again, stay subscribed because we will be giving you guys a whole week dedicated to the horror side of 40K, which is pretty much everything when you think about it. But anyway, that's all I got for today. Let me know what you thought about this story and what other topics you want us to cover. But again, it's been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.